Danny in Los Angeles, you're on with Dave and Matt. How are you?
Oh yeah, Louisiana. They.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's entirely my fault. I just instinctively saw L.A. and not Louisiana.
No, that's fine.
Because given the choice between being in Louisiana or in Los Angeles, I'll take Los Angeles every day for the rest of my life.
Well, I might understand that. But yeah, I don't know if you're familiar what the prompt was for whatever question I had, but it was something like,
you think that God is the best explanation for the supernatural or the non-natural?
Right.
Except that demonstrate that first you need to demonstrate that anything supernatural actually exists. How can you do that?
Well, I think that by definition, something that's non-natural is not going to be verifiable.
Well, then you can't possibly have a good reason to believe that it's real. Why on earth would you believe something that you have no hope of verifying?
Well, you could have a priori arguments.
No. That's not verification. I asked why you would believe something that you cannot verify. And not only are you believing it, but you think you found an explanation for the thing that you can't verify. How does that work?
Well, I think there's a category error, right? Because if there's a non-natural object, right, we can
show me a non-natural object. I have no evidence that any non-natural object exists.
Well, your own mind is not natural.
No, my mind is not an extant thing. The mind is the label that we put on what the brain does.
Wait, why would
everything about my mind is a product of my brain. It's not a non-natural thing that exists. It is absolutely the product of natural interaction.
Now, is it a product of your brain or is it your brain?
As far as we can tell, the thing we call mind is us labeling what the brain does, but you still have not provided any object that is non-natural that exists.
Well, I already pointed out that it was the mind, but rather than hearing...
I don't agree with you, so come up with something else, because I do not think that that is accessible, not the least of which is that even if I were to agree with you that the mind was a non-natural thing, it doesn't exist as a thing unto itself, and you have no way of showing what the explanation for it is and why God would be a better explanation. First, you have to come up with and say, here's something that clearly exists and is real and is supernatural. How do you do that?
Yeah, I already said that, like, for instance, my intentional states...
You're not listening.
Right, so they can't be natural states.
You're not listening.
I'm listening now.
I've asked you several times how you could show that something is, in fact, non-natural, and all you keep doing is claiming that it is. How can you show that the mind is non-natural? Interrupt me again one more fucking time, I dare you. How can you show that the mind is not natural?
It's a category error. That's like asking, how can you show the number 9? I just don't
know. It's not a category error. That is you dodging the question. I asked, how can you show that the mind is in fact non-natural? And you claiming it's a category error means that you are just asserting that it is. And anything that you can assert without providing evidence, I can dismiss without providing evidence. So are you going to just waste our time, or are you going to show that something is in fact non-natural? Say category error again.
It's an unintelligible question.
It's not an intelligible question. The mind is either natural or non-natural. Show me which one it is and show your work. That's not an unintelligible question.
When we're talking about something metaphysical rather than physical, right, we're going to get arguments for metaphysical postulates as opposed to...
I'm not interested in metaphysical postulates. The mind, if it exists, is either natural or non-natural. You need to show which one it is.
Then I don't know what you mean by show other than argumentation.
Evidence, argumentation. So far, all you've done is just say it's a category error for me to say that it's natural.
Well, we just meant something different by show, because typically what people mean by show is like observation evidence. But that's...
You know what I'd like for you to show is the evidence that supports the notion that the mind is not natural.
Yes, minds have intentional states. Intentional states are normative, so they create the possibility of failure.
That is not a demonstration that something is not natural.
It was an argument. You just said
it's not an argument. You haven't. I'm asking you for fucking evidence that the mind is not natural.
I just gave you
because hang on, because your entire premise is There is something that is non-natural. That's premise one. God is the best explanation for non-natural, is where you're going. But you haven't made the case that the thing you're pointing to is non-natural.
And to affirm that, I gave an argument for why the mind is non-natural, but you haven't.
No, you didn't.
Tackled anything.
No, you didn't. You just made an assertion and kept saying it was a category error.
So why don't you move from the mind to something else? Because I think we've exhausted the mind category. And then my first thought when you asked the question was that Occam's razor. When you have two competing claims for something that happened, usually the simplest.
That is not Occam's razor. That is not Occam's razor, and that's not what Occam's razor means. That notion.
Tell me what you think it means, Matt.
That notion, I tell you exactly what it means. It means do not multiply entities unnecessarily. It is often portrayed as the simplest explanation is more likely correct, but that is not what Occam's razor is or says. It just means that we don't get to multiply entities unnecessarily. And so when we have something like the mind, where you haven't shown that it's non-natural, it would be multiplying entities unnecessarily to propose a supernatural explanation for a mind when you haven't even demonstrated that the mind is something that is supernatural in origin.
What premise did you disagree with for my argument that the mind is normative?
You have not presented an argument with premises. How dare you suggest you have? What's your first fucking premise?
My first premise is that the mind is composed of intentional states. The second premise is that intentional states are normative states. And normative states, so this is the third premise, right? I'm just going to kind of do a little syllogism here. Normative states create the possibility of failure. The possibility of failure, right, is only made possible. Basically, it's not a failure or success, good or bad, is not seen in natural states. So that means that part of what the mind is, that's the same, the intentional aspect of the mind, can't be natural.
I don't follow your argument at all. The mind is the label that we put on what the brain does. If the brain stops working, there is no mind.
Well, I don't know. I don't think you could support that, right?
Well, all right. If show me a mind absent a brain.
So again, this is just it's an unintelligible question.
It's not an unintelligible question. I specifically said your view is that a mind can exist absent a brain, correct?
Yes, I don't think.
Then demonstrate that a mind can exist absent a brain, because I don't see evidence of that. That is not a nonsensical question, no matter how much fucking hand waving you want to do. Show me a mind that does not require a brain, and until you do, I will not accept that a mind can exist absent a brain, period.
I gave you those three premises. Which one do you disagree with? I can
goodbye, sir. You are a time waster. I just asked you to demonstrate a mind that can exist absent a brain. Can you do that or not?
You can just mute me. I gave you
I can mute you. I can hang up on you. I'm giving you one more opportunity. Can you demonstrate that there is a mind absent a brain?
Let me give you an argument for why that's true, right?
No, can you demonstrate it? Can you fucking show that the thing you fucking claim fucking exists actually exists? How hard is this?
I don't know what you mean by show. If argument,
I know you don't.
Showing.
I know you don't. But your argument does not show that a mind exists absent a brain.
What's the first?
I tell you what the first thing is. The first thing is us moving on, because you are engaged in a time waster. You are so enamored with this notion that we don't understand consciousness and we don't have a full explanation for the mind that you want to just say, seems supernatural to me.
That's God.
Sorry. That's not the way it works. That is an argument from incredulity, essentially, that you just won't believe something. But I'm saying every example of a mind that we've ever seen correlates directly to a brain. I have yet to see evidence of a mind absent a brain. You think, well, the caller thought that there could be a mind absent a brain, but then just kept saying, I've made an argument. What don't you accept about my argument? First of all, I don't accept that your argument demonstrates that a mind can exist absent a brain. Not the slightest.